What's good, y'all? Welcome to Griffin and Bass. Alongside Ryan Griffin, I'm Matt Bassin. Got a lot of football and baseball to get to, but before we do, got to remind you guys to like and subscribe everywhere you can find us. That would be Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. We got full episodes on YouTube, as well as DetroitSportsNation.com. Ryan, football news. Let's start at home, where some good news coming out of the Calvin Johnson Detroit Lions camp, where Calvin looks like he's going to be taking the first round number 12 pick Jameson Williams under his wing to help him get acclimated to potentially being the number one for the Detroit Lions. What's your thoughts on Calvin getting back into the fold?
I don't want to be a wet blanket here. I don't know that it's him getting back in the fold with the Lions. I think he's just helping out Jameson Williams because he likes the kid. He wants the kid to succeed. When Jameson Williams picked number 18, he said it was an homage to Calvin, who was 81, so he just flipped the numbers back around. But I don't think this means that there's any bridges mended between the Lions and Calvin by any means.
All right, well, so to piggyback on what you're talking about, Calvin, Megatron, abruptly retired in 2015, and his relationship with the Lions has been shaky, and that's putting it nicely, at best. This is a Hall of Fame inductee. He holds the franchise record for receiving yards by first ballot, receiving yards record by nearly 2,500 yards, receiving touchdowns record by over 20. A little bit of bickering over, $1.6 million, right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And he wants a reimbursement over something he didn't feel he should have had to pay back, and doesn't want to have to work for it because he feels he's already worked for it. And whether you're on the Lions side or you're on Megatron's side, I think it's at least a good sign that Calvin wants to get involved and help out. He has a thing for wide receivers, it seems like, in general, obviously, with that being his position, but he kind of takes to that a little bit more and has wanted to help, and apparently has been involved with some of the wide receivers in the past. Not that we saw it on the field of play, but maybe it'll be different with Jameson.
Man, Jameson Williams is the most talented receiver that the Lions have had since Calvin Johnson, even coming off of his ACL tear. I don't even know that it's so arguable. Obviously, he was the highest receiver picked by the Lions. They took TJ Hawkinson a little bit ahead of where they took Jameson Williams in the draft, but he's a tight end. And with Jameson Williams, it's obviously great to have Calvin as a mentor. Any wide receiver would be lucky to be taught by Calvin Johnson, one of the greatest receivers ever. I know his all-time numbers don't stack up, but he was injured. He, of course, retired early. But just when you watch this man in his prime, one of the best receivers of all time. Hopefully Jameson Williams can be another best receiver of all time and do it in the Honolulu Blue for even a longer time than Calvin does. We're hoping that Jameson Williams ends up breaking all of those Calvin Johnson records that you rattled off there in the beginning. And for Calvin, while again his beef has kind of always been with, I think, the ownership group, the front office, whatever you want to say, it's not anything that he's ever taken out on other players, right? He doesn't come out and bash the Lions as a defense, even though there's certainly room for it, or a receiving room, there's certainly room for it. Jared Goff, the list goes on and on. He's still been gracious as far as the players go, right? The camaraderie, and there's nobody on this team, at least I don't think anymore, that Calvin would have played with. So it seems like he just kind of has that NFL brotherhood, fraternity, whatever you want to call it. And he does know, of course, that he played for the Lions. So maybe he's a little bit more willing to help the Lions players. Although I've seen him work with some other top receivers in the game. I think when Julio Jones was in Atlanta, he was working with Julio a bunch. Two of the best receivers ever. Calvin, obviously, from Atlanta, went to Georgia Tech, all of that. So still has his home roots there. And then in Michigan as well. And I think it's just him reaching out to Kid. Maybe he would have reached out to him even if he didn't play for the Lions. I guess we'll never know. It's not like he reached out to London or Olave or at least anything that we've heard of. So maybe there's some credence to, because it's the Lions, it's the reason he helped, or it's because Jameson Williams shouted out Calvin Johnson that he decided to take that step forward and say, hey, if you want to come kick it with me, we can do that, and I can give you some tips, some whatever. So that's kind of where I think it is. It's a good move on Calvin's part, obviously, and all the Lions fans love to hear it, even if it doesn't mean Calvin returning back to Ford Field. I think he got inducted in the Ring of Honor last year, I think, and when they came out at halftime, and Martha got booed. Martha and Sheila got all booed. But I think with Jameson Williams, or even with Lions fans, like taking out Calvin, potentially like rekindling his relationship with the Lions, it's just cool that we have our rookie receiver being taught by one of our best receivers ever. Like if the Broncos, if John Elway was like tutoring Russell Wilson or something, like they'd get a kick out of that too. So I think that's kind of more so what it is, and that's the more of the reason to be excited, and certainly not a bad thing.
Oh, definitely not. I wonder if Calvin sees some similarities in Jameson's game versus his own, and I wonder if he sees some similarities as well in the way they are coming into the league, coming with the Lions. He talked about both of them being a higher draft pick and the expectations that come with it. But fans might not remember, but Calvin was in a row of receivers taken by the Lions. You had Charles Rogers, you had Roy Williams, you had Mike Williams, and none of them really panned out. So when Calvin was picked, there was a love, but there was also a question mark of, we've done this before, we've tried this before, is it going to work this time? And then with Jameson, it was the Lions made this trade up to pick again early in the draft. They had seen, I think London was the first wide receiver off the board, and he was taken at 10 or 11, something like that. And so I wonder if they saw like the dominoes falling and said, we need to get a wide receiver in here. This is the guy talent-wise, even if he's hurt right now. And then there was the questions from the fans again, why are we taking a receiver? And so I'm wondering if he's seeing similarities between how they came into the league along with maybe in their game.
Yeah, I think there's similarities. They're both also coming into bad teams, obviously. Calvin was the number 2 pick. So the Lions were one of the worst teams in the entire league when Calvin joined, and then they went, I think, 0-16 his rookie year. So even a step back from their number 2, or his number 2 draft selection where he was picked. And Williams obviously fell a little bit because of his injury, but still a high pick. Was more pressure on Calvin, I would imagine, than there is on Jameson Williams, only because I think most Lions fans are going to be patient with Jameson Williams, knowing that he's coming back from injury and just wanting him to be the guy. And it probably helps Jameson Williams that the Lions have another first-round pick that was taken even higher than he was, to where if he's not performing, I think most of the pressure is going to go off him, and Jameson Williams is going to kind of just get a free year because Lions fans will make all the excuses in the world for him, and not excuses in that, oh, you're just using this to say whatever. Like, they might be legitimate, right? You got Jared Goff throwing you the ball. He's coming back. Probably not until like week 8, if that, right? Maybe even a little bit later. I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions slow played his development. And then if Aiden Hutchinson struggles, it's going to take a lot of the pressure off of Jameson Williams anyway. And I think he's going to get the benefit of the doubt more so than probably any other rookie receiver for good reason. And with him and Calvin, I do think their situations are pretty similar. I mean, of course, they're always different, but I do think that there's some credence to what you said, and that's partly why Calvin reached it.
It's a shame that he's not actually back into the fold, Calvin, because we got Hard Knocks coming up soon, and how much fun would it be to see Calvin working with Jameson and the wide receivers in general on HBO, where there's no bleeping or anything like that. You're getting the full language and everything because it's paid channels, and it'd be a lot of fun to watch 81 working with the wide receivers, but they're not there yet. I'm hoping they got there with Barry eventually. I hope they get there with Calvin as well, because it would only be for the betterment of the organization. The fans would love to see it, and especially right now with Hard Knocks about to be launched and we're going to be seeing the Lions every week on Tuesday, it would have been a lot of fun to see Calvin involved in the fold then. But c'est la vie, that's not happening just yet. We'll have to deal with Dan Campbell biting kneecaps and watching Jared Goff overthrow receivers on HBO. Speaking of quarterbacks, Ryan, last time we talked about a quarterback, we talked about Kyler Murray, and we talked about the contract that he received from the Arizona Cardinals. And since then, news has leaked on verbiage in that contract regarding study film session for Kyler Murray and a minimum of how many hours he has to do it during the week. And we didn't really talk about that on our show when it first came out. But now that Kyler has kind of come out of nowhere, had a unscheduled news conference on Thursday to defend himself against the backlash he's received from this independent study addendum that was added to his contract. So before I go all in on this, man, how you feel about this? Because this is one of your boys.
Yeah, it's certainly weird, right? And it seems like it's nothing we've ever seen before. One thing that I think will happen is I think we'll probably see this in just about every contract moving forward in some respects, right? Maybe not everybody has to watch film. Maybe for others it's a weight room requirement or something. But we literally just saw this. The news came out, I don't know, an hour or two ago. The Zion Williamson has something similar in his contract, not necessarily film, but he can only be at a total percentage of body fat, or body fat and weight can only combine to make some type of number that they decided was fit. And I kind of think it's a situation of nobody did this because they didn't think of it. But now that somebody's thought of it and teams are like, oh, we can do this, I can see pretty much any contract moving forward, any of the big ones anyway, having some type of clause in there like this. And Kyler is of course going to be the lightning rod because he's the first, and everyone's like, oh well, we were questioning your work ethic anyway, so this just proves it to us. And part of his response, I was the number one pick, a Heisman winner, undefeated in high school, top 10 picks in MLB and NBA draft, or MLB and NFL draft. Like, how could I do that if I didn't have a work ethic? Which I think is a pretty valid point. But then somebody asked him, well, then why would the Cardinals do this? And he's like, I'm here to talk about football. So not necessarily a great look right there. He kind of came out, had his response, and then just shut down all the questions after it. It's, again, man, of course it's not a good look because it's something that we've never seen before, so it's certainly weird now. But I think probably by the time we get to it on this next third or fourth quarterback contract, where even if it's not this exact wording, I think it's going to be something similar where there's like a weird clause in there, and I think that's just kind of the way things are going to move going forward.
We've seen clauses before in contracts. We've seen weight clauses and things like that as far as linemen in football or certain athletes in basketball. We've seen it before. I think Charles Barkley actually might have had one that it wasn't major news back then. Internet wasn't the way it was. And we've seen ones where you weren't allowed to do certain things, play certain sports, things of that nature. You couldn't play basketball and stuff. But for a quarterback to be mandated to study a certain number of hours of film, and obviously this brings back memories of Jamarcus Russell and being sent blank tapes for the weekend, and then he comes back from the weekend saying, yeah, I watched it, it was great, I watched this route and studied this, blah, blah, and there was nothing on the tapes. So he was obviously lying. And to see it again come up, and Kyler to bring up his accomplishments, and I'm already being questioned behind the eight ball because I'm only 5'10" and I can't afford to take any shortcuts, no pun intended, all this stuff. And then a correct question was brought to him. Well, then why was this in your contract? If you're doing this work already, this isn't something that is in everyone else. Aaron Rodgers, I don't think this was in his contract. Now, again, we don't know. We don't see all the verbiage, but it wasn't, you figured it'd be brought to light like it was with Kyler Murray. And so we've seen quarterbacks get contracts recently. Kyler's isn't the first one to cap in the last couple of years or something. And so this is just a new thing. No. We've seen contracts be signed throughout the last few months by quarterbacks, and none of them had this you have to study game film clause in them. But it is for Kyler. So how are you going to, how do you defend this?
I think the other teams just didn't think about it. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't even be surprised if all these quarterbacks have just mandates from their coaches anyway. Like, hey, watch this amount of hours of film, and it's just not in the contract. They just understand like it's part of the job. And right. It seems maybe like Kyler didn't understand that. There's something about him playing video games while he's watching film, which if he's going to have his iPad on or do independent film study or whatever, I don't really know how you police what else he's doing. Like, how do you know he's not getting a massage and there's the film on the table, so the iPad's running, he's just not doing it, right? So, like, there's a couple things. Like, I still do think it's just something that the Cardinals obviously felt they needed to put it in there one way or another. But I think even if other teams felt like their quarterbacks in the past weren't watching enough film, they just didn't think to add it in the contract that, hey, you have to have this much iPad film time, or like whatever it is, right? However they're actually going to measure it. I just don't think that that's something that they thought of, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's something that we see in some of the contracts, some of the newer quarterback deals moving forward, right? Like when Justin Herbert gets his deal, or Lamar Jackson, who's renegotiating a deal right now. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if that's if a similar clause is in there, basically. And then number two, again, I had no idea how you're going to try to police this thing. It seems almost
impossible. There's an easy way to police
didn't want to watch. Like if Kyler didn't want to watch film, he's not going to watch film.
But there's
find some way around it.
There's an easy way to police it. You police it by mandating that it's done in the facility. It's done at the Cardinals, whatever facility that they do this at, and not at home where it can't be monitored. And if you don't trust your quarterback enough that is involved in the mandate, that's a problem. Look, there's no question that Kyler is talented. He wouldn't be where he is if he wasn't. And he felt the need to bring this up, where I refuse to let my work ethic, my preparing, to be in question. I put in an incomprehensible amount of time and blood, sweat, tears, and work into what I do, whether it's football or baseball. People can't comprehend the amount of time it takes to do two sports at a high level in college, let alone be the first person to do it ever at my size. It's funny, but you can refuse to let your work ethic and preparation be questioned, but it's going to be questioned when you start the season off hot as a pistol and are in the MVP race, and then you get hurt, you come back, the second half of the season, it's nowhere near what the first half of the season is, and you even lose to the Detroit Lions and look disinterested while doing it. And you brought it up that it almost seemed like he didn't study any film of the Lions because he didn't feel he needed to because it's the Lions. Now, look, that I can understand.
After the game,
right?
It was like, yeah, we didn't.
Yeah, so he's admitting to the fact that he's not doing his job off the field to make him better on the field. And look, I understand he's had a better 3-year career so far than Jamarcus Russell, but Jamarcus Russell made it 3 years in the NFL without doing any homework. So apparently it can be done just on talent alone. If he wants to continue to get better and continue to add to his accolades of Heisman winner and all of that, he's got to start studying his film.
You don't think that he has a point, like, even with the size thing, right? Because Jamarcus Russell wasn't 5'11", 5'10", whatever Kyler is. You don't think Kyler has any type of a point where he's like, hey, obviously I put in some work on my game, which is why.
Oh, no, I'm not arguing that. I'm not arguing that at all. You can work on your game all you want in ways of working on your mechanics and getting in the weight room and all that stuff, maybe hanging upside down to get a little bit taller. But studying film so that what you're facing coming up in the next week, on the next Sunday or Thursday or Monday, whenever they play, you figured that would just be a natural part of the job as a quarterback especially.
Yeah, maybe he did it all 16 weeks except the week they played the Lions. There were 16 out of 17 weeks.
Right. Well, I do think this clause is hilarious. I think his coming out and defending himself immediately is interesting, and the time's going to tell. The product is going to tell. We'll see how he reacts on the field and how he responds. Big fat contract. He's done better each year. Now he's got to do better than this. You just got paid one of the biggest contracts in football. You got Aaron Rodgers. I think it's just Aaron Rodgers is ahead of him as far as a yearly salary. We talked about this the other week. It's Aaron Rodgers for sure. He's at 50. I think someone else was a little bit above Kyler.
I thought Deshaun was above him too, but Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, it might have been Deshaun that was above him. Yeah, and then it was Kyler, and then it's Mahomes. So you're with 2 out of the 3 names are elite company. The other one is infamous right now, but you got to get better. You got to not lay the egg that you laid in the playoffs this past year. You got to do better than not making the playoffs the year before or having a losing record the year before that. He's gotten better each year. The team's gotten better each year. You got to continue it, and it looks like if you study and do your homework, you'll do better on the tests on Sundays. So we will see. Sticking in the NFC West and more quarterback drama / controversy, the San Francisco 49ers, who were not that far away from possibly going and maybe even winning a Super Bowl themselves last year, are done with the man who got them there. They are handing over the reins to second-year quarterback Trey Lance and are doing everything they can to get Jimmy Garoppolo out of San Francisco. And Kyle Shanahan has been on the airways, both on TV as well as podcasts, talking about it and saying that this has been set in motion for a while. It was set in motion last year when they drafted Trey Lance, and that they have no They have no plans whatsoever to eat $25 million, which is what Jimmy Garoppolo is due if he is on the roster week 1 of the season.
Yeah, man, they hate him. That's what it sounds like. And I don't really understand why. I don't think he's a great quarterback either. But it seems like they just kind of thrown him out, like really just thrown him in the trash. They gave him permission to go talk to other teams to, I think, eventually see if they can work something out with the contract where they're only paying so much or Jimmy G's willing to take less, something like that. And it's sort of what happened with the Baker situation where I guess the Panthers and the Browns had this deal for like months. It was just a matter of the Panthers didn't want to pay over X amount of $1 million. And eventually they got there, and then that's when the trade happened. But I don't know if it's going to be a similar situation with Jimmy Garoppolo. I know he's got some shoulder issues, and I don't know. I can't really make sense of it. I know they want Trey Lance to come in and be the guy. Last year they kind of ran not necessarily a 2-quarterback system, but on third downs or in the red zone, they bring in Trey Lance so he could use his athleticism to keep the drive moving or just give them a different look in the red zone. And it was fairly effective, right? They made it to the NFC Championship game. So again, most of that was because of Jimmy G. But I don't think Jimmy G is some great quarterback, but I don't know that Trey Lance is some great quarterback either. And I don't know why they're so eager to throw out Garoppolo. I would let Lance just come in and win the job if he was truly going to be better than what Garoppolo is, because the Niners, they should have a Super Bowl roster. They had a Super Bowl roster last year. They came within a dropped interception in the fourth quarter away from going to the Super Bowl, and then them against the Bengals, who knows what would have happened. So it's a really good team. I don't know why you would just throw out your quarterback who's gotten you to 2 conference title games and gotten you to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, to be fair to Jimmy G, he has won 70% of the games that he has started for the Niners. He hasn't started as many games as they would have hoped. He's had injury issues. And to be fair, he's had an all-world defense around him for a lot of it, an all-world running game around him for a lot of it. And so I understand not thinking that he is the guy. It's just a weird situation where you and apparently the injury plays a major part in it, is the fact that they assumed that without the surgery, the injury, they would have Jimmy G would have been gone by now. This wouldn't even been an issue. But because of the injury, because of the surgery, he is not gone yet. And so they are forcing the action, and they are not even having him at training camp. They have sent him home to wait and find a trade partner. They have no intentions of having him on the roster week 1. It is no question. It is no battle. This is Trey Lance's team moving forward. Kyle Shanahan made that very obvious over this past week. And it's all in the hands of a second-year quarterback now with a team that is ready to win now. You got a great defense around you, but probably the most dangerous front seven, even without D Ford, who the Niners just let go of. You have a pretty darn good offensive line that has allowed for running the ball very easily, no matter who is at running back for the Niners over the last so many years. You got Deebo Samuel. You've got the second-best tight end in football. And now you're handing it over to a second-year quarterback that, unlike Mac Jones, who got a year of work, unlike Zach Wilson, who got a year of work, he hasn't gotten that year of work. And so it's a whole bunch of unknowns. But apparently all the news out of San Francisco is happy and hopeful and thinking that Trey Lance is going to be ready to go come September. We'll find out. They have a favorable schedule at the second half of the season. 6 out of their 9 games after the bye are at home. So he'll have a lot of home cooking to try and improve and keep this team where they've been, which is, when healthy, a Super Bowl contender. We'll see if Trey Lance can do that.
Yeah, I don't even necessarily know that I think he can. I think it'll be a different element. Even when he was in the games last year, it was more of a gadget role. And now it's going to be the whole offense is on you. For all intents and purposes, it's your ship now. So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. We'll have to see, right? It's not if he's going to be ready by September. He's going to have to be. He's going to at least have to be ready to start. Otherwise, the Niners are sunk.
All right, let's get off of the gridiron. Let's jump on over to the diamond, and we're going to bring in one AJ Reilly from the corner, as well as newly minted father of 3. AJ, congratulations on Theodore, obviously, and welcome to Griffin and Bass.
Thank you guys very much. I'm
chest hair too.
Oh, thanks. I figured I wanted to try whatever. It is what it is. I figured I'd match the
appeal on
vibe.
the show
I had to bring it up somehow, guys. I really had to try to bring that little extra to Griffin and Bass, and here I am.
All right,
What's
well,
up, gentlemen?
To help us with the trade deadline, MLB, Major League
Yes.
Baseball, it's coming up 2nd of August, right, is the deadline?
2nd of August, 6 p.m.
All right.
6
And,
p.m. in the evening. It used to be like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, which was like
Yeah,
so
it did.
weird for a trade deadline.
I remember
and
that.
now it's 6 p.m. So people can get off work and catch up on the news, apparently.
All right, well, before we get into any of the local stuff that you can give us on the Tigers, we know the Yankees got to jump on this already. They went
did.
out and grabbed the outfielder that they needed in Andrew Benintendi and sent a few different minor league pitching prospects to the Royals in exchange for the 28-year-old Benintendi. How big of a get is this for the Yankees, and what does this mean for the other teams in baseball by the Yankees getting Benintendi?
Well, number one, it fills a need for the Yankees because they needed outfield. Yes, they have Judge, who's the best player in baseball right now. But as far as like other outfielders go, they have Joey Gallo, who swings a Swiss cheese bat, can't hit anything. Aaron Hicks, who's on the downside of his career and still can be somewhat productive, but is more of a defensive outfielder than he is an offensive outfielder. And then you got Giancarlo Stanton, who's at this point more of a DH in his career to kind of save his body because he can't stay on the field healthy. So this is a big get for the Yankees. Now, the big question is going to be whether he can play in Toronto if they have a playoff series in Toronto, or if down the stretch, if there's some meaningful games in Toronto that he has to play. That could be an issue. But you're talking about a guy that's won Gold Gloves. You're talking about a guy that he hits the ball well. He this season alone is 26% above average in weighted runs created, which is like an offensive measure of how well his at-bats produce runs. And so for the Yankees, got richer. They got probably one of the better positional players, not named Juan Soto, that they didn't have to empty their top 10 farm system to get Benintendi. And so it's a great move for the Yankees. Just fantastic. Yeah. And it's even better that they're playing the Yankees in the first series with Benintendi.
It's hilarious. Just to clarify for fans who are just questioning what you're talking about with the whole Toronto thing, Benintendi is not vaccinated against COVID-19, and so obviously Canada has their own laws, and they are not letting anyone who's not into the country, and so that is why he has not been able to go to Toronto. And just like you said, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Benintendi if the Blue Jays somehow get into the postseason and end up having to face the Yankees. That would be a very interesting conundrum for the Pinstripes.
Look, they're getting into. Both of these teams are going to get into the playoffs. They both right now, I think, are over 50% as far as like getting into the playoffs. Yeah, they have the Blue Jays right now, according to Fangraphs, have a 96.2% chance of making the playoffs. So they're getting in the playoffs. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Unless some kind of like the world falls in, the Blue Jays and the Yankees will both be in the playoffs. The question will be whether they're playing each other.
Right. Well, so yeah, obviously a big get for the Yankees. You're talking about a guy that won second to Judge in AL Rookie of the Year voting. He's already won a World Series with the Boston Red Sox. He did that in his second year, and everything you said about what he's doing this year at the plate. He's at a career best 320 with big old OPS as well, 788 through 93 games this season. It's absolutely a big get for New York, but it also apparently blocked a Tiger from possibly going to New York, right?
Well, it's all conjecture, right? It's all musings from the mind of AJ. But I always thought that Grossman would be a potential fit for the New York Yankees. Not great for us, and can't hit left-handed anymore for whatever reason this year. But with Gallo's struggles, why would you not put a guy like Robbie Grossman in there who can hit from both sides of the plate? He can at least work an at-bat and doesn't have, 103 strikeouts and 230 at-bats? Like, Grossman would have been a good fit and a much cheaper fit, but I think that because of this trade, it does affect the Tigers in the sense that Grossman will be a Tiger for the rest of the year, which is what it is. They just got to make a decision on him.
The Yankees can still call up Al and just offer him like a pencil sharpener. They can
basically, yeah. Yes, you're correct. They could, and truthfully, I think Al would probably take that deal.
See? all's good.
Wait, hang on. So you're telling me the Tigers are sellers this year? We're not buyers?
Yeah, Tigers are definitely sellers, guys. If you listen to anything AJ Hinch says, he goes, you want to be the team acquiring players, not the one giving them away. And the way we've played, we'll be in the position to give them away. So, yeah, the Tigers are going to have a little bit of a different look come next week. Maybe even after this weekend, because Toronto's a definite landing spot for some of those relievers. They got the 24th best bullpen in all of baseball right now, so some guys might not be making the trip back home.
Well, so that's what I wanted to ask, because I want to know who's worth getting on Detroit. That's not a pitcher. Now, obviously, our pitching staff they want to shred it because we actually have talent there that's producing. Our talent on the field, besides that, in the positions, are not producing as much this year. So, who can we predict or we're going to be losing in the next week?
I think for sure 100%. Is this just non-pitchers?
You can throw pitchers
just
there as
Tigers
well.
in
If
general.
you have any non-pitchers, that'd be great to know as well. But I assume our pitching staff is going to be decimated.
Look, the three names that potentially as position players could be traded would be Grossman, Scope, and Barnhart. Grossman and Barnhart are both free agents at the end of this season, so they'd be very cheap. And when I say this, we're talking about pencil sharpeners and maybe a pencil cup coming back for them. Like, that's the type of return you're going to get for these guys because they're not producing offensively. Barnhart doesn't even have a single home run this year. They're both free agents at the end of the year, so those could be like expiring contract guys that maybe a contender wants, like a backup catcher who's really good defensively but just is a hole in the lineup at this point. The other name would be Jonathan Scope, and the only other potential name that I think could be tossed around in a trade would be Candelario, but that's going to be determined on what he does these first two games in Toronto, because he swung a very good bat against San Diego last week. He had 8 RBIs in 3 games, had 3 home runs. He swung the bat well, but do teams want to pick up on that 3-game stretch? Very small sample size. Those are the only positional players that could even be probably talked about in a trade. Unless you're talking about a huge blockbuster for like a Juan Soto, then the whole cupboard is open at that point, right? Pitching-wise, for sure, Michael Fulmer will not be a Tiger after August 2nd. There's no two ways about it. Michael Fulmer will be on a contender pitching in the bullpen come August 3rd. And the reason for that's twofold. When we talk about value, right, we talk about value specifically from what we're going to get back as the Tigers. But if you look at it from the other team's perspective as far as like a value buy, you cannot get more bang for your buck than Michael Fulmer because you only have him until the end of October. He's a free agent after this season. And yes, his performance is good, but teams are not going to pay a high price for just a 3-month rental. So expect, if Michael Fulmer is traded, for Detroit Tigers fans to be like, Al sucks. What in the world is going on? What a terrible return, right? But it's to be expected at this point that you're not going to get a major haul for Michael Fulmer. You will get a major haul for a guy like Gregory Soto, who has 3 years of team control left after this and throws triple digits from a left-handed pitcher. Like that, you could ask for the moon and probably get somewhere close to it, but those are probably the two most likely to go. There's another guy, Chafin, another guy who's got, both of those guys have 1.5 years of control left, and then obviously the big name being tossed around right now is Tarek Skubal, which it would take the moon and probably Mars to get Skubal, given what he is owed and what he's done and how much control he has left. So,
Ryan, you got anything for AJ on the Tigers before I jump off to a different team?
I don't know. Like,
let me ask you guys something.
Okay.
Would you trade for any of our position players?
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, AJ.
Would you guys trade for any of our position
I'm
players?
looking at some of the stuff here where it's like, oh, he's a solid average MLB player, and I'm like, oh, well, maybe not then.
No. Yeah,
I do think Barnhart, like off the bench as a backup catcher, maybe he gets like a really good rapport with one of your pitchers or something. So I think you get some value there. if you're the team that's getting them, not that the Tigers are going to get any value, but yeah, that's all I can really see. Like a wily vet who's good at defense.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Is do you trust the guy that's making these deals? And we have no reason to at this point.
Nope. Nope. Definitely not.
I see former Tiger Jose Iglesias might be on the move again.
Oh, yeah? Someone needs his hitting power?
No, they need his glove.
I know. I'm kidding. Okay, yeah. So the Tigers, not surprisingly, are sellers. Surprisingly, AJ, the Boston Red Sox are sellers, and there are names to be had. JD Martinez could be gone. Nathan Eovaldi could be gone. Kiki Hernandez could be gone. And guy that you and I talked about earlier in the season, Xander Bogaerts. What are the Red Sox doing here? They sweeping house.
Well, yeah, but the most recent thing I read on MLB trade rumors from them is that they still want to compete. And this was at 4:30 this afternoon. According to Shane Bloom, he told them we're trying to make the postseason. He told NESNs that they're trying to make the postseason. So I don't know if they're going to sell. The Red Sox are what the Tigers were in 2016. Not good enough to necessarily make the playoffs, but still holding on for hope that they might squeak one out. But when you're talking about the Blue Jays, the Yankees, all ahead of them. You're talking about even the Rays at a certain point, all ahead of them. The Boston Red Sox right now have a 22.6% chance of making the playoffs. And that 22% chance is only if they make a wild card. That's it. So
how insurmountable are these games though? Because I'm looking at the standings, it looks like the Red Sox are only 4 games behind the Blue Jays. So why would you not try and compete? And I know there's 180 games left?
5.5 behind the Blue Jays at this point. And it all comes down, they've got to play the Yankees more, they've got to play the Blue Jays, and they're all division rivals at this point, and it's really tough when the wild card teams ahead of you are the ones that are in your division.
Not if you beat them.
Well, yeah, but do they have
There's no help to be had, though. You don't have any help at that.
You don't. Yeah, you don't have help, and the Red Sox, for the names that they do have, and for the splash that they made in free agency with Trevor Story and all that kind of stuff, they have significant issues with their team. That you saw what the Blue Jays did to them last week. I think they had a minus 47 run differential in 3 games. 25 of those came in 1 game, right? But still, the Red Sox are a team that it would be in their best interest to sell, and it would be in their best interest to sell right now. But again, 2017 Tigers, JD, what's his contract? Xander Bogaerts is a free agent at the end of the season, so is your return going to be massive for him? We've been there. We've seen this story before. It's just going to be really interesting to see what the Red Sox actually do. Because I don't think they have a chance.
Aren't they 3-14 in their last 17 games? Or 4-13? It's one of the two.
Yeah, they had a great June, and then July came, and they just forgot how to play baseball.
And now we're going into August.
Right.
And that happens. Ryan's got that does happen. It's the craziest thing with baseball, where the month turns and a team that was just playing awful for a month just goes hot. But when you are going 3-14 over a 17-game stretch, and you are saying, "Nah, we don't want to be sellers. We still believe." And is it pride getting in the way here? Is that is Boston? This is a team that has won 3 World Series in the 21st century. They've been the best team in baseball over the last 15 years. So
they may have had, or may not have had a little bit of help with those wins as well. But it probably is. There's probably a sense. I keep liking it back to the Tigers, and at least they reached the mountaintop, unlike the Tigers did, right, during our window of competitiveness. But you want to keep the band together for one last hurrah, right? And that's kind of where you get the sense that the Red Sox are kind of at. They're a middle-of-the-road team at this point. They're not a team that's really going to light the the league on fire for the rest of the season because they got holes in the pitching staff, they got holes defensively. They get a fly ball hit over their head and they don't even run after it. That's where the Red Sox are at, right? So it's I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do. That could shake up a lot of the trade deadline stuff if they were just like, no, well, we're going to sell. Because you talk about putting somebody like a J.D. Martinez on the block, or you talk about putting the Xander Bogaerts on the top. Now you got a very, very interesting trade deadline. Very interesting trade deadline.
All right, and then we got two big names in red and white unis that may or may not be going somewhere in Shohei Ohtani and Juan Soto. So, obviously, different teams. They both were red and white, though. The Nationals and the Angels. What are your thoughts on this? Was Shohei's situation as well as Juan's situation?
Soto's going to be gone. No doubt about that. All the reports from all the baseball insiders at this point is that the Nationals actually have offers in hand at this point. So Juan Soto is going to be playing for a different team to end the season. Now, according to Buster Olney, from execs around the league, the front runner for them would be the San Diego Padres right now. He even talked about like the package, and I'm actually looking for the tweet that he put out, but he talked about the package that they could offer, and it was Mackenzie Gore, the stud. Here's what he said: as of Thursday morning, some rival executives perceive the Padres to be the front runner to land Juan Soto, and so it's really going to be interesting to see if San Diego strengthens themselves, because they're another team that's going to most likely be in the playoffs. They're at a 83% chance to win the wild card and to be in the playoffs at 84%. So, I mean, they're trending in the right direction, and Juan Soto just helps them even more. And what it also does is it keeps Juan Soto off of their division rival, the Dodgers, as well. So there's a little bit of chess being played there as well.
Man, Padres been spending over the last few years.
But they have the farm system to do it. They are, when you talk about rebuilds, they have done well, and they're still a top 12 farm system according to Fangraphs. So, I mean, like, that's how you build a team. You get good, solid signings, you draft well, you develop well, and then you trade well. And the Padres have checked those boxes. This team that we root for in Detroit, they've drafted okay, haven't developed well, haven't really signed well, definitely haven't traded well. So, I mean, but he's definitely going to a Padres. Most likely not going to the Yankees, because especially after the trade with Benintendi. So I don't know. Everybody's probably lining up making offers except Al Avila at this point. But
okay. And then what about Shohei Ohtani?
Shohei.
Free agent
Shohei's
next year.
Interesting. After next year.
After next year.
After 2020.
And yeah,
right?
2023. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unlikely to go back to LA is what I read. Like, if
he's
say there's a free agent, he'd be like,
no, he's not going to do the Mike Trout thing and sign a long extension for the Angels because he doesn't like to lose. Shocker, right? Wow. A competitor that wants to compete and not dwindle into mediocrity. Oh, if you are the Angels and you want to rebuild, then even if you just wanted to retool, you trade Shohei Ohtani right now because his value is never going to be higher. If you hold on to him even into this offseason, that means that you've lost at least half a year's worth of value in the trade that you could have gotten. So, he should be on the move, or at least they should be listening to offers. But again, we're talking about a Moon, Mars, and even probably Jupiter type offer for Shohei because of all of the different things that he brings to the table. We're talking about something that has not been done, and done at this level since 19.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's fair to compare that with what Babe Ruth had to deal with back in 1918. But
and that's
to have
the thing,
a modern
too, right?
pitcher
It's
that
like
wins you 20 games and hits you 40 homers. That's just
right, and that's
ridiculous.
the thing, because Babe never really did it in conjunction with one another.
Mm.
So he was a pitcher and then moved to hitting. Shohei's been pitching and hitting. So yeah, this guy, he's incredible. And as long as he keeps doing what he's doing, there's no reason why he should not win MVPs until he stops doing what he's doing. Because nobody, like, there's literally nobody more valuable than somebody that can go out there and throw you 100 mile per hour and get you 6-7 innings, but then also help his own cause and hit 3 home runs in a game, right? So, still lose, right? Yes, and that's the thing, right?
They lose 4-3, but he only gave up 2 of those runs.
But listen, if you're sitting in the front office of the Angels, like, there's no better time for you to go. Maybe it's time to flip the script, because you're talking about the 27th worst farm system in MLB. So your farm system's not going to produce much going forward. And news just broke on Wednesday of Mike Trout with a very rare back condition that he's going to be dealing with. So really, if you were a savvy GM, you would do what you could to actually unload both of them. I don't think that would happen, but
and there's no reason to go watch the Angels after that. Like, there's no reason to go watch the Angels if Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout are both gone. And the franchise that has fallen so... They used to be one of the best farm systems in baseball in the early 2000s. In the early 2000s, they had a top 10 farm system, and everything was golden. And it just all went to crap.
Yeah, 20 years ago, right? But a lot of those... That's the thing, too, is... Like, and I keep likening it back to Detroit, but we keep talking about these farm systems, right? Where would you say that Detroit's ranked in their farm system right now? Would you say top half or bottom half?
I would guess bottom half.
Matt, you're correct. 26th out of 30 teams.
Jesus.
Oh, yeah, they don't count the guys that are already... Never mind.
Well, Riley Green did just graduate from prospect status, but... This is the thing when you talk about prospects is a lot of these rankings tend to be propped up on 2-3 players at a time. And the moment that they graduate, they're all. If you look at Fangraphs and their rankings right now, Baltimore has the best minor league system. They have 2 players with a future value of 60, which on the scouting rank means, like, okay, they're going to be solid MLB players. Not superstars, just solid. So it's like, so why the statement, prospects are cool, but parades are cooler, is so true. Mm-hmm. And if I were a GM, I wouldn't, like, my farm system, yes, I want talent developing, but if I have the opportunity to go and get a guy, I'm going to sell prospects to go get a proven commodity. And too many times people are falling in love with these prospects, and it's just not the way forward.
I miss the days when the Tigers were buyers at this trade deadline. It was a lot more fun.
Once they fire Al, they will be again.
God, I hope so. All right, I think we've ran the gamut there, so I want to thank AJ for joining us here on Griffin and Bass. I want to thank all of y'all for kicking it with us on Griffin and Bass. For Ryan Griffin, I'm Matt Bassin. All right, AJ, this is what you do. You take your one hand here. You take your other hand here. Do it with me now. Get them up. All right. Now you put them together and you lock those thumbs just a little bit. Okay? Just lock those thumbs a little bit. All right? Now, say it with us. Wu-Tang is for the children.
Wu-Tang is for the children.
Wu-Tang is for the children.
We'll see y'all next week. Peace.
I don't know what y'all just got me into.
Hey, Ryan Griffin here. Thank you so much for watching today's episode of Griffin and Bass. Be sure to give us your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to click the bell to receive the latest notifications from DSN and subscribe for breaking news, community blogs, polls,